I've been lying to my boyfriend about being trans when I'm not. Hello, everyone. I am reaching out to get input on finding some way to fix a fairly intense mess I'm in, which is totally of my own making. My relationship, which is deeply important to me, is built on a huge lie, and I'm terrified that everything is going to blow up in my face. Basically, I've been lying to my boyfriend about being a trans woman when I'm actually a cis woman. I know this sounds horrible, because it is, but it's also complicated. I'm an American who has recently finished a master's degree at Cambridge, and I'm originally from the southern United States, the Deep South. But I grew up in a big city. I'm currently trying to find a job here in the UK as I'm dating a British guy I met here, and I want to stay close to him. He's incredible, and everything you could want in a man. Tall, 6'5", striking eyes, gorgeous accent, amazing jawline, and very, very fit. He rode for his college. Very into art and theater, and dresses well. Most importantly, he has a wicked sense of humor, and is very, very kind. Cue the weak knees. He treats me like a queen, and I honestly think I'm in love with him. What I most appreciate about him is his openness to discussing any topic with humility and open-mindedness, including the issues that face our society, such as racism, transphobia, homophobia, misogyny, misogynoir, and ableism. He comes from a middle-class family, but his dad was working class, and I think his dad's experiences and the conversations around Black Lives Matter and Me Too made him realize that he needs to be a part of the solution. I was very involved in social justice work as an undergrad in the US, so this was very important to me. Even though we were both master's students at Cambridge, we met at a film festival in London, where a friend of mine from undergrad was showcasing a short film on queer cinematic history. I noticed him during the after-party, where I could tell he was a little uncomfortable as one of the few straight men in a queer space where he didn't know many people. He was basically attached at the hip to his own filmmaking friend from his hometown, who also had a film showing and whom he had come to support. I noticed that he eyed me at the bar, and I decided to be brave and strike up a conversation. Lo and behold, we hit it off, and we spent a large portion of the night talking about film, art, and trading bad jokes. In other words, lots of flirting. He spoke very appreciatively of my friend's film and made several references to queer culture. A straight man that knows Sophie? Come on, y'all. When he asked how I knew one of the filmmakers, I told him that my friend and I met through queer and trans activism on campus in undergrad, which is true. He noticed my trans flag pin and asked if we were dating. He asked in a sweet and respectful way, but in a move I very much regret. I made a stupid decision in that moment and lied. "Oh, no," I said. "We're both trans and just friends." The issue is complicated, as I've been lying about being trans for a while. I don't want to go into too much detail, as my last attempt to discuss this was a mess, but my trans friend was harassed at a bar in undergrad, and I claimed that I was trans too when I defended her. This became a pattern due to other incidents, and I basically became known as a trans activist on campus, a persona I defaulted to more and more, and enjoyed if I'm being honest, as I felt passionate about advocating against what was often blatant and open transphobia. I told people that I was able to get hormone replacement therapy when I was young, and was able to get reassignment surgery after graduating high school. I know now that this is wrong, and that claiming to be trans when I'm not is horrible on many levels. Even though, at the time, my trans friend told me she supported this, as I was doing it to back her up when she would get awful comments during nights out. I took a long break from Reddit after realizing how messed up this was. The issue is that this lie became such a huge part of the facade I wore during undergrad that it's now a part of my default identity. I told myself that moving to the UK would mean a fresh start, but I was too tempted to claim a culture and a community that wasn't mine in that moment at the bar. He was kind of surprised, but accepted my story, as I am taller at 5'10", and not a waif because I played volleyball. We added each other on Instagram that night and kept chatting. We eventually began hanging out more at Cambridge and met up for coffee several times. He asked me a lot of questions about being trans, which I was able to answer by pulling details from the lives of my trans friends and things I had learned while volunteering during undergrad. It was honestly sick. But a messed up part of me began thinking that he was more interested in me because I was trans. I have a big personality and enjoy going out, and he started joining me. One thing led to another, and we began hooking up. He was surprised that my body looked just like a cis woman's, and the only thing I feel somewhat okay about is that perhaps I helped remove a stigma about reassignment surgery and post-op trans women's bodies versus cis women's bodies. Otherwise, as we began getting more serious, I felt worse and worse about the lie. But I saw no way to tell the truth without losing him. He's told his family and a few of his friends that he's dating a trans woman, which I didn't find out until later, and he had to have some difficult conversations because of it. He even stopped talking to a friend who was transphobic. While he's incredible for this, knowing that it's based on a lie just makes me feel worse. He's lectured people who have told him that they would have never guessed that I'm trans, telling them that this is a transphobic thing to say, which it is, but I'm afraid that this means the truth would humiliate him. I haven't met his family yet, and I'm dreading doing so. I was, and still am, very humiliated. Meeting his family is going to be a huge, serious step, and he wants to do this soon. My parents might also be visiting me in October, and I'm worried that he might find out somehow. We are now seriously considering moving in together if we can find a place, and if I can get a job. So far, I've held this facade together, but I'm constantly worried that I will get clocked for lying by someone who's actually trans. We went to Trans Pride London together, and I wore a mask the whole time. Even writing this is giving me a knot in my stomach, and I hate that I might lose someone who I'm otherwise able to be totally vulnerable and free with. I deeply care about him, and I feel trapped in a deep, dark hole. I know I've messed up. Any advice about how to even begin would be very appreciated. How do I even begin this conversation? If he doesn't cut me out of his life immediately, how do I begin rebuilding trust? Furthermore, I need to figure out how to actually be a real ally that doesn't involve all of this lying. I know I am the biggest hypocrite, and that what I'm doing is hurting more than just him. I was very uncomfortable making this assumption on my own, but several trans commenters have said that trans and cis women's bodies are not exactly the same. It's apparently a big part of what they go through, because they can't pass as well as they'd like. Not only do they find this OP to be highly offensive, they also charge her with creating false expectations. She isn't eliminating a stigma about surgery, but rather making that stigma greater by making the men she sleeps with think that a trans woman's body is indistinguishable from a cis woman. And this is worse when you follow her post history and learn that she's actually done this to multiple guys. If you can't even tell your significant other who you are, then you're not able to be vulnerable and free with them on any level. It's a bad relationship. I want to feel for this person because I know that people sometimes mess up and tell lies they shouldn't, but this OP has been telling this lie for about 3 years, according to her post history, and she keeps doubling down on it, despite saying that she knows it's wrong. If you can't come clean, then you aren't ready to be in a relationship. Stop offending people and then telling them how much you're helping them. It's preachy in the worst possible way. If you want to be a real ally, be a truthful one. You can't be a real anything as long as you're lying to everyone who knows you. It's not always that simple, but in this case, it really is. I won't pretend to relate to this issue, but the opinion of those who can is clear as day. If you haven't bothered listening to that opinion in the course of 3 years, then whose ally are you? Theirs, or simply your own? Santa Claus keeps flinging poo over his neighbor's fence. Santa Claus is our elderly, portly neighbor 2 doors down with a big white beard, hence Santa Claus. He and his wife have 2 little yappy dogs we call Dancer and Prancer, and a fenced-in yard. Duck Dynasty are our direct neighbors, so named because when we were looking at our house, their yard was literally filled with goose decoys. Last winter, they kept a deer carcass next to the house for weeks. Also, one of them had a big beard, a la Duck Dynasty. No fence around their yard. Then there's us, with a big fenced-in yard. I'm at the doctor's office, and I receive a text from my wife that Santa Claus is flinging poop into Duck Dynasty's yard. Luckily, it was the eye doctor, because I was not at all sure what I had just read. I arrived home about a half hour later and asked what was up. Wife was looking out our bedroom window and sees Santa with the pooper scooper. No big deal. Then he starts flinging poo over the back of his fence. Huh. Weird, but I think maybe that's still his property, and it's pretty close to a highway, so no one really goes back there. Gross, but whatever you want to do on your property, I guess. Santa moves to a different part of the yard and flings the poo right into the neighbor's yard. The people who live there are pretty young, so maybe they don't want to say anything, but heck if I'd be standing for that. Duck Dynasty have 2 labs, so it's not even like they'd confuse yappy dog poop with lab poop. I'm just amazed at the stones on some people. They don't do it when the neighbors are around, so we're fairly sure that this isn't some kind of neighborly agreement where Duck Dynasty is doing Santa a solid. I kid you not, as I'm typing this, my wife looks out the window and says, "Huh, she does it too." Yep, Mrs. Claus is out there right now in her support hose flinging poo over the fence. Some people. I think Reddit is honestly breaking my brain. I used to live in a just world, and now I read stories like this constantly. Why? Just why? Why would anyone do this? Why would anyone watch someone do this and not tell the neighbors about it? Are you just hoping to see how it plays out? Or do you feel like it's not your place? I can't get into the mindset of someone who watches their neighbor flinging poo into the adjacent yard and just shrugs it off like a weird random thing that happened in their day. I'd have feelings about it. I don't even live near these people, and I have feelings about it. I need help from the viewers. Would you insert yourself into this weird situation, or would you just sit back and see how things unfold? Leave us a comment below and let us know if you do the same thing as the OP in this story. If you made it this far in the video, consider liking and subscribing for more videos coming. My mother abandoned us for a week without telling anyone for a booty call. Yeah, the title says it all. This happened years ago, so well before everyone and their children had phones. This also was in the middle of the school year. I was 16 or 17 at the time. My 2 brothers were about 6 or 7 and around 14 or 15. We all rode buses to school. One day my mother isn't home for dinner. Not too horrible. I knew how to make dinner. It's nothing unusual for myself or my brother to make food for ourselves. The day proceeded as normal, and I got my youngest brother to bed. Didn't think much of it. The next morning, Mom's car still isn't home. I get home from school that day, and it's obvious that she hasn't been home. At this point, I should also mention I had no car. So I call my grandparents and ask them if they know where she is. They don't. They brought us some staple groceries and checked on us, but left us home because, I've babysat plenty of times. Day 2, late at night, my mother finally calls. She drove 12 hours to go see her ex-husband. She'll be home in a few days. We stayed at my grandparents' for the rest of the week. Years later, my grandmother told me that was the last day she ever had any respect for my mother. I always assumed it had been a gradual thing, but once it was pointed out to me, I had to agree. If you haven't figured it out yet, the theme for this episode is entitlement. Look, single parents deserve to get one off every once in a while, but maybe make some kind of plans for your childcare first. Driving 12 hours on a whim is weird whether you have kids or not. It's also weird that OP never considered this as being the moment a person might lose respect for this woman. My mother never abandoned me for a week without warning, but I can imagine it would have informed my opinion of her for some time. In this case, it didn't, simply because OP's used to babysitting. Honestly, the way that's brought into the conversation, it makes things sound even worse. I'm just happy the children all survived this woman, since it doesn't sound like that was very much of a priority of hers. Entitled coworker demands I sell her my dwarf hamster. This is something you won't believe is true unless it happens to you. Recently, I happened to acquire a very friendly and smart dwarf hamster. Yes, hamsters are tameable, but this one is an absolute angel. I've been talking about her to one coworker I'm close with, who also loves small pets, and maybe word got around. Or I actually talk more than I intend to. Or I'm now officially the crazy hamster lady in the office. Anyway, the front desk girl, whom I only know because she's at the front desk, asked me about the hamsters I was selling, and in confusion, I told her I wasn't selling any animal. Back and forth, I figured out she mistook me for a breeder trying to sell my hamsters in the office and thought that I was advertising my products. Who does that, though? Obviously, I told her she was mistaken, but she wouldn't accept it. She insisted that I was lying to her. Like, why, if I was desperate enough to sell hamsters in my workplace? She said that I must sell her a hamster, so I asked her why. She then told me she and her child watched some TikTok clips, and the hamsters on there were all so cute, and the kid wanted one. But every single one she bought for her child were bitey monsters. She thought I was one of those TikTok hamster people, and I could sell her a well-behaved hamster. Once again, I assured her she was mistaken, that I was just bragging about a very tamed hamster I just got. "Fine, can you sell me that hamster?" was her reply in an annoyed tone. As I refused, she got more and more annoyed, saying that I'm an adult and know what I'm doing. I can get another hamster just like that, while her child is only 5 years old, and I'm supposed to help a kid in need. So I said one last no and walked away. I shared this story with the coworker I was close with, and she told me she was given a hamster by this woman 2 or 3 months ago. She did tell me when she first got the hamster, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. So hopefully this woman didn't eliminate all the ferocious hamsters she got. This is the second hamster story that's come across this channel in a fairly short amount of time, and I'm honestly blown away. I did not realize people were this into their hamsters. I know people get really into guinea pigs, and their love for those potato rats will always be a source of confusion for me. One commenter suggested that if the hamsters were biting, they were probably mistreated. Maybe. I've met some hamsters who were honestly jerks. That can happen with literally any type of animal. But if literally every hamster this woman dealt with acted the same way, that sets off some red flags. It kind of sounds like she's as great at dealing with hamsters as she is at dealing with coworkers. But she might not be the most entitled coworker out there. Have you ever dealt with an insane demand like this by a coworker? Let us know the story in the comments below. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.